Welcome to Fear and Greed, the Sunday edition. It's the 30th of January 2022 and I'm Sean Aylmer. We're back for another year of the Sunday show. It's a change of pace from the rest of the week when the Fear and Greed team share some of our favourite stories. As always, I'm joined by the team. Adam Lang and Damsky, good morning. How are you? Welcome back.
Good morning, Sean.
Now, give me just one highlight from your break over summer.
Tathra. Yeah, we had a week in Narooma, a week in Tathra, then unfortunately a week of family isolation, which wasn't much fun, but Tathra was awesome.
Down in the southern New South Wales near the Victorian border there?
Yeah, really, it's got quite a long way south, almost parallel with Melbourne. So cold, fresh ocean water, but beautiful part of the world.
I think it's a wonderful thing that you did holiday down there because Tathra 2 years ago was hit really badly by the bushfires, and I know that the community down there are very keen to get tourists back, so good on you. Michael Thompson, Mickey T, welcome back for the year.
Hello, Sean.
Give me your highlight.
My highlight is a pretty simple one, actually. My highlight was not having an alarm going off at 4:30 every morning to get up to put together Fear and Greed.
It's the simple things, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. Not that I don't love spending time with you both every morning.
Subtle pause there.
What about you, Sean? Did you have a highlight from the summer period?
I did. To be honest, it probably was the alarm, but also we had a week away on the New South Wales Central Coast, which was good. A lot of isolation, which was bad. I just think it was a summer which you kind of feel you're a bit ripped off. Now, maybe not if you're in Western Australia because for all the criticism of border closures, they haven't had an outbreak. But if you're in Queensland, South Australia, Northern Territory, Tasmania, Victoria, New South Wales, wow, you're running into COVID the whole time.
Yeah, and it does. The problem is as well, for a lot of the eastern states as well, this was actually a really nice summer. The weather was actually pretty good. It rained a bit, but it wasn't one of those ones where it's kind of 42 degrees all the time. It was actually kind of perfect weather to get out and do stuff, and no one really could get out and do stuff. So
that's true.
It does feel a little bit rich, though, to be griping about the weather being too nice.
Yeah, that's true. Now, Michael, while we've got you, much audience feedback. We were away for a long time, actually. Did people remember us?
They did, and I particularly enjoyed this one from a listener by the name of John Knight, who wrote on LinkedIn earlier in the week, actually. He said, "Fear and Greed, my favourite podcast, is back. Finally, I feel like I can get my routines back on track in 2022. I missed you guys."
Knighty.
That's terrific.
I love Knighty.
John Knight, who is not related to any of us, I think.
No, I know.
Makes for a pleasant change. And I don't know if the Sunday show is part of that routine for John. If it is, I'm sorry.
I hope so.
Sorry to hear that. But the best thing anyone can do to help Fear and Greed is to really kind of spread the word and do what John has done and write a little testimonial somewhere. Leave us a nice review on Apple Podcasts. That's always great, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, actually, I think we got a few backhanded compliments as well with people a little upset that we didn't come back sooner than we did. And we could take that negatively, but I actually think they're right. We should have come back a week earlier or so. We'll do that next year, perhaps.
Maybe.
Yeah, I'm into that. That's a good idea.
Now, Damsky, you had 2 weeks off before we all went on holiday, so I'm not surprised you wanted to come back. Look, we also have a safe word of the week. I want to put one forward up front, Dylan, as in Dylan Alcott. If you listened to yesterday's show, you know Michael and I talked about our favourite story of the week being Dylan Alcott becoming the Australian of the Year. I reckon the more we say Dylan, the better.
What also works is the Bob Dylan selling his music catalogue reference too, right? But I know it's a different story.
Look, I've got a safe word as well. See, my only issue with using Dylan Alcott as the safe word, using Dylan, is really the safe word kind of has negative connotations when Adam needs to kind of bail out of the conversation.
Yeah, good point.
So, look, I'm just kind of psyching myself up for this. I know it's very early to get into this, but
I know what you're going to say.
But you're going to do it anyway, aren't you, Michael?
But there are a few things that I need to get off my chest.
Why do I feel like I'm being lined up?
This is going to end with a safe word, but I'm going to start with one person, one name, and that name is Adam Lang.
Thank you.
Adam, across the summer, I've been putting together a little file on you, and the file is called, it's quite a long name for a file, the file is called Proof that Adam is actually 90 years old and not 50-something.
Okay.
Point number one.
Yeah.
you had a birthday during the holiday break.
I did.
Am I right?
Yes, you are right.
And I imagine you probably had birthday cake and maybe some friends over. And what did you spend your birthday afternoon doing, Adam?
Well, it's great that you asked, Michael. Thank you. And so we had we went to the beach first for a surf, which I loved. We came home and we had a couple of friends over, a family over for a barbecue, an afternoon barbecue, and the gardens were made ready for a full afternoon of backyard cricket and croquet.
Croquet?
Croquet.
Sorry. No, just I have to have clarification here.
Yep.
Backyard cricket, I get that.
Yep.
And croquet, as in the game where you hit the ball that the 80 and 90-year-olds mallets through the hoops.
Yeah. I may well have spent 6 hours readying the grounds for the game of croquet too.
You've got to be pretty old to have the time to actually put it into the yard to get it ready for a game of croquet.
It's great fun. Everyone can play, any age, old, young, and everyone did.
Yeah, but do any of the young people enjoy it? That's the question, I suppose.
I'm not so disappointed I didn't get an invite to Adam's party now.
Well, my next piece of evidence from the proof that Adam is actually 90 years old,
Exhibit
not 50-something
B, shall we call it?
Yes, Exhibit B.
Right.
Over the Christmas period, we did put together some shows that ran particularly during Christmas and New Year's, where we picked out some of the bigger stories and the most interesting stories of 2021. Adam, do you remember what you chose as the quirkiest story of the year?
Oh, God.
Well, I'll tell you. You said, and I quote, "My quirkiest story for the year is young people buying shares." I had text messages when that episode was released.
No, it was young people buying overseas shares.
Ooh, we could go back to the tapes, but
we're not going to.
We're not going to. Point number 3, Exhibit
C.
Exhibit C,
Yeah.
Australia Day. You had a small gathering at the your house. Sean, did you get an invite to this one?
No.
We had to have a quick phone call on Australia Day afternoon to talk about the podcast, and a message came back from you, Adam, saying, "May I please be excused from the call because, again, I quote, dinner is at 5:30 p.m. Is that to give you enough time to still watch the bill and have your dentures in the jar by 8?
I think so.
It was actually, lunch had been delayed. We'd had a game of afternoon cricket.
The blender had broken. Yeah.
Croquet. The blender had broken.
Yeah. Anyway, I rest my case. Adam, you claim to be in your 50s. You have the fitness of someone in their 30s, but
the disposition of someone older.
You were probably around for the Great Depression.
Okay, so let's hammer Adam time.
So was there a safe word in there anywhere?
Yeah, I'm not sure where the safe word came out
The
of
safe
this.
word, take your pick. Probably croquet, I suspect.
Croquet.
Okay, I've got a nomination too.
Yep.
The biggest story over the summer while we're on a break certainly had to be up there, was Novak Djokovic and his brief visit to Australia. What a sensation. So I was going to suggest Djokovic.
I love that story, Adam, because in the end, every day I changed my mind whether I agreed with the Australian government or I agreed with Novak Djokovic. And, every time I read something, I'd change my mind. I couldn't work it out. But at the end of the day, the Australian Open has been sensational without Novak Djokovic.
Yeah.
And if nothing else, the Australian government stuck to its rules and it said if you've lied on your application, then you can't come in. Good on it.
Yeah, look, I find him a very dislikable sort of champion, if I can put it that way. He's just doesn't endear himself to me much at all, but he's an astounding tennis player. But the way he did it, wasn't good, but I think the way that we handled it was just a disaster.
Yeah, but I mean, as I said, I changed my mind every day when I read something new on it. I couldn't work it out.
Seemed to have been a popular decision to send him home.
Yeah, it did. Look, something else I think happened over the time we're away, which is really, really significant, and this is one I think, Michael, affects you more than Adam and I, Meatloaf. The death of one of the great singers of his time.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be a Meatloaf fan, Michael?
Here's the pause.
You are putting me in a really difficult position because he has obviously passed.
Never speak ill of the dead.
Can't defame the dead.
I'm not so much worried about defamation on our humble little podcast here of Mr. Loaf. Well, look, it wasn't really my style, but I appreciate that a lot of people did love him. And you know what? All the stories that you hear about people meeting him, he just sounded like a really, really decent bloke.
Yeah, just call me Meat.
Yeah.
Adam, well, you would have been a Meat fan, wouldn't you?
Well, I remember, look, operatic rock, right? It didn't really get me at the time, but I do respect it. Bat Out of Hell sold so many copies around the world. It was an international smash. And I remember listening to it going, this is incredible. I didn't quite like it at first, and I just became familiar with it over time. So I wouldn't say I'm a fan, but I like it.
Okay, let's just keep on this theme of music because I like talking to Michael about music. Another person that's been in the news this week, musician that's been in the news this week, is Neil Young. Now, he's having a fight with Spotify. He argues that Spotify allows interviews, and in this case, one by Joe Rogan, who's the number one Spotify podcaster in the world, to go to air. Spotify say, well, look, it's sort of freedom of opinion, and Joe Rogan can interview anyone he wants, and, I'm not really taking sides on this argument. But the upshot of it all is Neil Young has pulled his catalogue from Spotify. Neil Young, now he was before my time and before Adam's time. However,
don't know about Adam's time. That one's still up in the air.
It's some spectacular music, Neil Young. Michael, are you a Neil Young fan?
I just feel like I'm constantly being set up here now. I don't mind him, but he's no Barry Gibb. I'll just put it like that. But then again, no one is Barry Gibb except for Barry Gibb.
So just questioning your age at this point, Michael.
That's a bit rich, isn't it? But look, in terms of the dispute that he's having, I actually quite like the fact that he is being so principled about this and trying to kind of fight COVID-19 disinformation by using his music. I think, isn't that what a lot of these people of that era kind of use music to get a point across, and he's still doing it?
It's not quite Vietnam, but still, it's a cause. I don't know. I mean, this is a bit like the Djokovic Australian government argument. I don't know which way to go on this, because I think Joe Rogan, as a podcaster, has every right to interview anyone he wants to interview, and Spotify has every right to allow that to go to air. They're not censoring it. Yet I also think that Spotify and social media groups have a responsibility to make sure that it's fair and balanced views are put forward. So I don't know where I come down on this one. It's a shame because I use Spotify and I like Neil Young, so I'm not going to be able to listen to Harvest Moon anymore. But yeah.
You've been wavering a lot today, Sean. We'll start calling you Sean Fence-Sitter Aylmer.
Yeah.
It doesn't really roll off the tongue particularly well. We might have to workshop your nickname. But
Fence-Sitter. I like that idea. It reminds me of balconies. And one of the great stories this week was smoking on balconies being allowed or not. And there was a ruling in Queensland in which smoking in apartments on balconies might be outlawed. What did you reckon of that one, Adam?
Look, I'm a fan. So having lived in apartments before and not being a smoker, I think it's great. But I just wonder about one of the rationale pieces was around it being a hazard rather than just an inconvenience, if you like. And you can probably extend that sort of rationale to everything, right? In the sense that if I'm driving a car that's carbon emitting, at what point is that hazardous? And so I thought it was a really interesting point. I'm for the decision insofar as smoking is concerned.
Are you for it, Michael?
110%. I cannot believe that it has taken this long to do this. I mean, smoking in most states, I believe, is illegal in cars with children under 16. And it comes down to that whole public health discussion that we had last year about mandatory vaccinations as well. I think you have the right to make a decision about your own health, but when it's and your own activities, but when you are starting to impact on other people, and we know that smoking affects other people, passive smoking in particular, that you don't have the right to make that decision for them. And I've lived in apartments and had people smoking on the balcony above and to the side, and that feels like a tremendous invasion on your personal space and your right to live safely in your own home when their smoke is coming in into your property. So I'm very, very, very excited by this.
I just totally disagree. Now, I'm an anti-smoker. I hate smoking. But there's a civil liberty thing here. Why, if smoking is legal, which it is, why should someone tell me that I can't smoke in my own house?
Because it's too close to someone else's house. It's if you were to contain it entirely to your property and it was to not go anywhere, then go for it.
But there's externalities. There's loud music in apartments. There's
loud
smells
music
of
isn't
cooking.
going to kill you.
There's cooking smells in apartments. There's all sorts of, apartment living is very different to many other styles of living. And I think actually telling someone that they can't have a cigarette on their balcony is just a bit rough.
Well, I mean, we could go the way of New Zealand and introduce legislation that actually prevents people of a certain age from ever purchasing cigarettes. So effectively, by the time they reach a certain point in the future, as people get older, there is just a cutoff where they won't be able to buy cigarettes. So it is effectively kind of put an end date on the cigarette industry in New Zealand. And so, I mean, that's the way we should be heading.
But just make smoking illegal. Why pussyfoot around and start putting limits on when you can buy cigarettes? That just pushes it underground, presumably. If there's such a big issue, just make it illegal.
It's a good argument for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is a hazard, a known hazard.
So I actually do agree with the idea of making smoking illegal because I think there are very few goods in it. However, while it is legal, I reckon we should let people smoke in their house.
It's amazing that Sean Fence-Sitter Aylmer came down quite firmly on this one.
You goaded me into it, Michael.
Yes, that was the goal.
Now, another story which I think is really interesting. Now, I came across it all over summer, so I went away for a weekend in the small beach town that we stayed in. There was very little sit-down restaurants open. I mean, you could get takeaway. They just didn't have staff. I went to get with one of my kids to get a car loan in the last couple of days to Commonwealth Bank and went in and said, can we make an appointment? And the guy said, look, we're really short-staffed. Just come in and line up. We can't really make appointments at the moment because you just don't have staffing to handle that. Another one of the kids works in an aged care facility close by to home and their staff shortages are horrendous. The isolation part of COVID, it's really hurting the economy. Now, we know there are plenty of jobs around and that, but if people can't get to work because of isolation and they can't get paid, it's a real problem for the economy.
We've covered previously about the unemployment rate dropping to 4.2%, but I think even more than that statistic is the issue and conditions in each state around isolation requirements. So it just affects so many people. Like our own situation of isolation was caused by one person that we happened to spend more than 4 hours with getting COVID, and none of their family nor ours got it. But we still had to isolate for 7 days.
I bet that person had a good time, though, spending 4 hours with you, Adam.
Well, I'm sure they regard it as a highlight of their summer. Sean, if you were to ask them.
Were you with Lara, your wife, and kids too?
Yes.
Yeah, so they would have enjoyed that then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you pass the time in isolation by practicing croquet?
Or spreadsheets? Maybe that's what it is, Michael. Maybe Adamski here, at work, it's all about spreadsheets. At play, it's all about croquet.
Well, I reckon croquet is about as close to a sporting spreadsheet as you can get because it's all straight lines and trying to get it through those little kind of hoops, which kind of look like a spreadsheet cell. Yeah. I think you might be onto something here, Sean.
Yeah, I think so.
We're painting a thrilling picture here for you.
What a gripping life I lead.
We have been to Adamski's house a few times, and it is, we shouldn't paint it as too aged care-ish. It's actually a lovely home.
Absolutely. As long as you're there in visiting hours, it's fine.
Mostly lovely people, mostly.
Yeah.
And except for one, apparently.
No. So, Adam, what were we talking about? I don't know. I've totally lost my train of thought here. Anyway, Adam, so it is interesting, your story about you were with someone for a period of time and no one else got COVID, whereas there are other cases where everyone got COVID, but it's really feeding through to the economy. And I actually think, like, if we look forward for the next 6 months, And while we're all very excited about economic growth and inflation and things like that, we still have to deal with COVID and the impact of the coronavirus, not just in terms of case numbers, but in terms of staff shortages and all that. And that could still really hamstring the economy. I reckon that's a real risk for the economy.
Oh, totally. The return to schools, the return to offices still really has only happened in a light way. So you've got public transport being way down in terms of its usage, schools back right about now, including tomorrow. So, it's going to be a really interesting period when people are mixing in that kind of normal way, if I can call it that, and how much isolation still continues to grip us. Because, in our case, it was one person happened to get it, unfortunately, but 9 people had to isolate. So, it did affect far more than the disease did.
Okay, we're coming to the end of the show, but a question without notice for all three of us. What are you looking forward to most this year?
First of all, is it possible to ask yourself a question without notice?
Probably not. Although, in my mind, actually it is. All sorts of stuff goes on in there which I don't understand, so possibly.
It just has a habit of sneaking up on you, doesn't it?
That's right. It's okay for you guys. You don't have to live with my mind. That sort of old adage.
I think for me it's probably it's not a sure environment to be operating in, but there's more certainty than I had going into the last couple of years. And so I am optimistic that this year will be better.
Economically?
Yeah, I think economically, I think just in terms of hopefully some ability to travel, hopefully ability to congregate in ways that we're used to again, conferences, functions, more use of retail and restaurants, that sort of thing.
Michael, what are you looking forward to?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it being a normal thing to get on a plane again and to be able to go around the country, maybe not necessarily overseas just yet. But I would look forward to the Western Australia border being not quite so hard. I just don't like the thought of part of the country being fenced off from the rest of it.
Yeah,
it feels wrong, really. It feels like it's creating two parts of the country entirely, and it just doesn't feel right. So I do hope that at some point that changes, because you just want the ability to travel freely within your own country.
Agree with that.
Do you know what I'm looking forward to?
Do tell us, Sean.
Another 48 episodes of the Sunday edition of Fear and Greed.
Adam, are you looking forward to that as well?
I'm ready to pad up for every episode.
Adamski, thank you for being part of today's show.
It's my pleasure, Sean.
Mickey T, same to you.
Thanks, Sean.
We're delighted to be back. Well, Michael and I are, and I'm sure Adam is too. I'll get used to it anyway. Michael and I will be back tomorrow morning with the usual edition of Fear and Greed. It's Sunday, the 30th of January 2022. I'm Sean Aylmer. We hope you enjoyed the show and have a great Sunday.